at the end in our Q&A session. And we'll get through as many as we can before the time runs out today. So you'll automatically be muted and webcams switched off as it is a webinar. But if you need any help, just drop a message in the chat or in the Q&A box. And like I said a minute ago, this will be recorded and you can get a copy of it in our post-webinar email. We have some more people from Kenya and Pakistan joining as well. Right, so we're about past now. So if we go through the agenda. So I'll be doing the introduction today, and then we'll be passing on to one of our presenters, Kevin Hyatt, who will go into the background of iProgress, and then Leah will go into the deep dive of the curriculum. And at the end, we'll have a quick Q&A session. So drop any questions you have in the Q&A box or the chat box. And then after that, it'll be back to me to close. So I'll pass you over to our presenters.
Thanks, Jemima. Really glad everyone could join us. And we're going to be talking today about iProgress, how it's all put together, and hopefully the help that it can give your learners. But quick introductions first. My name's Kevin Hyatt. I'm the Head of International Teaching and Learning Resources. And
my name's Leah. I look after our international primary and international lower secondary resources and curricula.
Brilliant. Thanks, Leah. Cool. Okay. So as you know, we're going to be talking today about iProgress with Pearson, supporting teachers and learners from ages 3 to 19. And we're going to be having a look at the whole journey and how it was put together and how you can be confident that it supports your school. Next slide, please. So iProgress is our complete suite of resources going from iPrimary, which starts at age 3, going to age 11 and covers early years and 11 other subjects, to iLower Secondary at Key Stage 3, ages 11 to 14, leading on to International GCSE with the 9-to-1 grading, and then on to International A-Level. And the idea is this progression fits together neatly and enables your students to access higher education or the workplace with all the skills and knowledge they need to excel. But when we talk about this, it's not just a list of different ages which we publish for or we create qualifications for. Our iProgress message covers the idea that we have comprehensive coverage of those core subjects at each age. And that covers teacher support like planning, learning and assessment support, curriculum matched resources, digital, print and online for your students, training and professional development for teachers, and support as well for communicating this message to parents and external stakeholders. And we've done this to try and create a consistent pathway leading across all of the ages. So when we talk about iProgress, we often start with iPrimary and iLower Secondary and move on to the later years. But I wanted to just take a moment to consider how it was actually created initially. So we began with the established international AS and A levels. And as you'll know, a little while ago, the international GCSEs were redeveloped around 2 core principles. So the first, well, 3 really. So the first one that I'd like to mention actually is providing that explicit preparation for international A-level. So they were designed to make sure that students who chose to go on to international A-level had all of the skills and knowledge required to access those qualifications. And then they were also built around 2 other pieces of research. So the first one was the idea of the transferable skills gap. Now, you may have heard people talk about this in the past, but in recent years, universities and employers have highlighted there's a transferable skills gap, despite these being the skills students need to confidently tackle their undergraduate studies and succeed in the world of work. There's some amazing statistics out there, like 1 in 6 employers have difficulty finding candidates with the skills they require. 54% of companies say skills shortages impact their ability to serve their customers. If you look at job adverts, 1 in 3 of the skills in a job posting is considered to be a soft skill. And 87% of university professors in a study in 2016 said that students did not have research skills needed for degree level study. The transferable skills gap demonstrates students need more than just knowledge to be successful. It's about skills as well as knowledge to help them progress. And that was at the heart of the redevelopment of the international GCSEs back in 2016-2017. Secondly, I'd like to talk about the new grading scale. So as you'll know, the international GCSEs are now graded 9 to 1, and that's been the case for a number of years now. Changing a grading scale means that the whole qualification was redeveloped to take advantage of this. And the numbered grading is more closely aligned to the British curriculum and meets the Ofqual standards of a regulatory body in the UK to help students successfully progress to A-level or international A-level and then on to university. It provides greater differentiation across different levels of attainment, and it rewards really truly outstanding attainment at the very top, that above A star. And it's been said by Ofqual and by the UK government that a 9 is worth more than an A star. That's unarguable. So that was kind of the first step. So we developed the international GCSEs. And at that point, although we had some qualifications at primary and lower secondary, we didn't have a coherent curriculum. It was at this point we developed the curriculum. You might consider it backwards, but it's not. It's having that identifiable endpoint in place, knew where we were going for. So we were able to identify kind of a starting point for the typical student entering at age 5, and we knew exactly where we wanted them to get to by age 14 when they began their international GCSEs. So when we were developing iPrime and iLower Secondary, we spoke to a whole host of different people. We spoke to people who were taking our current resources and qualifications, people who weren't, educational experts, ELT colleagues, people across different stakeholders within schools and within government and within educational bodies as well. And following a strong period of research, we came across some key findings around what people wanted in this age group. The first was for it to be an international curriculum based on British best practice. So the idea was that it wasn't just the English national curriculum, but it follows the skills, ethos, and pedagogy of English national curriculum, but it's appropriate for international learners. So that means the language levels might be different. It means it'll be culturally sensitive. It'll mean the examples used are more relevant to those learners. I mentioned the language levels. Typically, international students or international teachers will have English as an additional or a second language, and we wanted to make sure that people were best placed to engage with the curriculum and be prepared for the next stage of education. The third big ask in this redevelopment was the idea of robust, trusted assessment. So external, globally benchmarked and recognised examinations are provided at the end of key stages, but so are ongoing formative and summative assessments built around a very clear progression, which my colleague Leah will be speaking about in a minute. And then the final element was professional development. So just like with the other elements of the iProgress story, iPrimary and iLower Secondary have a strong professional development program. Switching to a new curriculum or new way of teaching can be a hard thing to do when there's a lot of other things going on in school. And we wanted to make sure that teachers were supported in learning and using teaching strategies to help their students achieve better outcomes. So going back to that second point. So iPrime and iLower Secondary are written for second language learners, but we'd like to consider that they have first language outcomes. So some curricula will require learners to choose a first or second language pathway at age 5, and they're mostly tied into that pathway. That means at age 5, teachers and learners are asked to make a decision about whether they're going to be taking English as a second or a first language at age 16. We don't think that's right, so we've been working with our Pearson ELT colleagues, language development experts, and curriculum developers to ensure there's a slow, thought-out, supported progression, meaning that although students come in with a relatively low level of English at age 5, by the time they're leaving at age 11 or age 14 to go to the next stage, they should see similar outcomes to somebody going through the English national curriculum in England. So with all this research in hand, we produced iPrime and iLower Secondary, which are the most recent part, along with early years, of our iProgress journey. You can see here some of the support that's provided with them, and we try to offer this level of support for all of our core subjects at each age group. And all of this is built around the idea of that really clear, structured progression, so you can ensure that any resource or support you're looking at for any age group is appropriate and forms part of that pathway to help students to the next level. And with that, in a second, sorry. Okay, we come back to the iProgress jigsaw. So As I said, although it looks like you begin at iPrimary and go all the way through to lower secondary and then international GCSE and international A-level, and that's the way a student will experience it, we built it with those endpoints in mind. So we were really, really confident that we were able to show that clear progression. And you can see that in some of the results that are coming through right now. We have students who have gone through iPrimary and lower secondary, and we're seeing better results at international GCSE from these students as well. For a closer look now at the pathway and what it actually looks like in practice, I'm going to pass over to my colleague.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Kevin. So hopefully that was a good introduction and overview into some of the research behind iProgress. In this next session, I'm going to dive into the curriculum across maths, science and English in quite close detail and follow a particular objective through the years, right through from primary to international GCSE and international A-level. So firstly, what is our curriculum? What does it look like? What does it do? Just as Kevin mentioned, we developed that British style curriculum. So that means that the pedagogy used in the curriculum, in the support, in all the other resources is based on that UK best practice and research. But we say style because it is very much, as Kevin said, an internationalized version of the curriculum. So there's international examples, there's an awareness of being culturally sensitive and accessible to non-native English speakers. The curriculum documents themselves, they contain age-related expectations in a year-by-year structure of objectives that create that ladder of progression across the years. And within the document, you'll have a curriculum reference, the objective, and any notes or guidance alongside the objective. And we take a spiral approach across our curricula, which I'm aiming to demonstrate. So the concepts are revisited in increasing depth, increasing complexity year on year. So let's start by looking at maths. So this is a very zoomed out overview of all of the subjects covered across maths at primary and secondary and through to international GCSE and international A-level. Now, please don't worry, I'm not expecting you to read through all of this. I just want to demonstrate how there is that progression across the years within specific knowledge and skill areas. And we can see the areas that each age group builds towards or forms the foundation for. So for example, this is the statistics strand at primary, which delves into graphs, charts, probability, data, and at secondary, and then onto graphs, statistics, probability at international GCSE, which then forms the foundation of many of the different A-level branches, but especially pure maths and statistics. Again, you can see another pathway for number. So number and place value at primary, numbers in the number system at secondary, numbers in the number system at international GCSE as well, and onto pure maths at A-level. So we do have these pathways throughout of objectives that form the foundation for those international GCSE and A-level topic areas. And obviously it isn't always a really neat progression from one area at primary to the international GCSE strand. It's definitely a lot of overlap of skills, a lot of linking skills. For instance, shape at years 1 to 6 will feed into geometry and trigonometry and vectors and transformation geometry at international GCSE. And just as another example, obviously a subject like number and place value at primary, which gives you that real fundamental understanding of number and foundational math skills, can arguably form the basis of lots of your different GCSE strands. So not just necessarily the numbers and number system, which is shown here. But for the sake of this overview, this progression just identifies that there are key areas in the curricula that obviously translate across all of the years. So just bear in mind that it isn't necessarily a rigid mapping. There's a lot of overlap across the different areas and skills, but with a really strong foundation in all of those topic areas at primary, you're going to be quite secure on a good pathway for progression at secondary and so on and so on. I wanted to take one specific pathway, so I'm going to be looking at the statistics pathway in a bit more detail. So I'll explore the age-related expectations within our curriculum at primary, how that develops and prepares you for secondary, onto GCSE and international A-level. If we look at an objective in year 2 under the topic of statistics, there's an objective on solving problems involving counting the number of objects in categories and sorting the categories by quantity. So the guidance alongside this objective is all about asking questions like how many blue coats there are on coat hooks and how popular the colour blue is, if it's the most popular colour for coats on the hooks. So you're starting to build that awareness of data collection, and that's paired with those skills of then interpreting data in simple tables. And you can see how this evolves at year 4 to becoming solving a variety of problems using data in tables and charts. And by year 6, it's become solving problems by organising data into a table, so involving much more actively presenting your own data, but also still interpreting data. And then on to year 7 and year 9, we have almost word for word the same objective of solving problems by interpreting or drawing graphs, charts and tables. And although those objectives may look the same, the wording might be the same, within the accompanying curriculum guidance, the level of depth for those objectives differs. So you can see at year 7, you've got a real focus on graphs and charts, maybe using spreadsheets. In year 9, the focus moves specifically onto scatter graphs and frequency polygons with emphasis on that real life context as well. And then I've copied across the endpoints of year 6 and year 9 of primary and secondary just to show you how that leads on to GCSE. So at GCSE, International GCSE, the specification point is all about using a range of different methods to present data. And at A-level, I've picked a very specific point about using some specific histograms, stem and leaf diagrams, and box plots to compare distributions, so to comparing different data sets. I hope you can see how, just from this overview, how the maths strand over the years is consistently building on that initial objective, even down to the wording that's consistent across the years. So not only is it really familiar and consistent for teachers, so you've got that structure across the school, but also for students, that structure, that familiarity, which many learners really rely on, will be the same throughout their learning journey. Obviously then building in variation, engagement across all the actual day-to-day lesson planning and resources. So speaking of resources, I wanted to demonstrate exactly what that curriculum objective looks like when it's embedded within the resources as well. So you can see this is an overview from our year 2 lesson plans, where you're looking at the lessons that are coming up in that unit, and lesson 7 is covering off that curriculum objective. And you can see how it's actually embedded within the lesson plan's main activity as well. In this lesson, students are asked to interpret pictograms, understand how symbols can represent more than one item. Within the lesson plan, you've got that key vocabulary, you've got the main activities, you've got textbook references, actual teacher talk that you can use in the classroom as well. But then you can see how that objective and those lesson plans are covered and supported by our Power Maths textbook at primary. So you've got your structured textbook with prompts, with different activities, with differentiation built in this case on interpreting pictograms. And this embedding of objectives within your lesson planning, within the curriculum, within the supporting resources is the same across all of the years. If we then go on and look at a year 9 objective, so secondary, you can see how the objective of solving problems by drawing or interpreting graphs is covered then within that textbook page. So lots of exercises and relevant real life examples, checking of understanding and variation, all built in there, all on that topic of displaying and analysing data to cover that curriculum objective. And you can also see how this then pairs with the lesson planning that runs alongside the textbook and covers off that same curriculum objective within the teacher focused support. And this follows right through to GCSE, where you're building that understanding of handling data and the different ways you can present and interpret data. So the textbook covers this. There's lots of different inclusion of transferable skills, particularly analysis in this case. And in this spread in particular, we're looking at pie charts, we're looking at pictograms, which you might remember the foundation for was introduced in our primary textbook spread as well. So all the different ways that we're using different methods of presenting data. And that might be the endpoint for many, but we also do have that further education pathway of that international A-level. So looking at how this builds to an objective within statistics, particularly on the topic of representing and summarizing data. So you can see how we're covering histograms in this textbook spread. So hopefully you can see how by just looking at one specific objective, you can really follow how it's embedded across both the teacher-facing resources and also the student-facing resources, and understanding how that iProgress pathway actually might work in reality. And of course, all of this thinking, all of this research that went into creating these pathways, all of that embedding of the curriculum objectives throughout the resources, that's all been done for you. So that is all part of our sort of offering. It's done by curriculum and subject experts. And this webinar, the aim of this is to really show you and give you the confidence in that pathway and that journey. So I'm going to go through science now in a very similar way, but with a bit more detail on the resources side of things. The science is slightly different, as at the later years, we obviously have different pathways into combined sciences or single sciences, especially as we get towards A-level, but that's why right from primary, we do group the topics into the distinct areas of biology, chemistry, and physics, because it's really beneficial in that pathway and making that progression more obvious. I'm going to look at a particular, in particular, the biology strand. So in particular, plants that we cover at primary and secondary, moving on to living organisms at GCSE, and then looking at photosynthesis and energy at A-level. So here you can see that in year 1, knowing that plants have leaves, stems, and roots. And you can immediately see that by year 4, we've used that foundation, that knowledge of roots, stems, and leaves, and built on that to include flowers, also deepening the understanding to the function of those different parts. So being able to not only identify, but also describe the functions of these things. Then in year 6, you can see we're again building on that prior knowledge, prior skills, but that knowledge has extended to identifying parts of a flower, still explaining the function of each part. And in the guidance that accompanies this objective, you can see all the different parts that they'd be expected to know. So this is really preparing learners for that jump into secondary, hopefully making it more of a step than a jump. And we can see that by year 7, we're asking students to identify positions of roots, stems, and leaves, but also know about the functions of them as well. So in the guidance that accompanies these objectives, it does go into more detail about the level of information required here, but that is almost identical to our objective at year 4. It's just the level of understanding that deepens each time the objective is covered. And by the time they've reached year 9, they're focusing in a lot more detail around specific parts of a plant, building on that overall knowledge and looking at knowing the structure of a leaf and the function of it and how it is adapted for photosynthesis. So I really hope you can see how even just from the wording and the structure of these objectives, you can sort of see how they were designed all as a whole. So they're really comprehensive and there's that thought out ladder of progression in there. Again, I've taken the endpoints from primary and secondary, so you can see how they progress onto your international GCSE and international A-level. So at GCSE, it's very similar to year 9. We've got looking at being able to describe the structure of a leaf and how it is adapted for photosynthesis under the much broader topic of nutrition for plants and being able to investigate photosynthesis as well. Then onto international A-level and understanding the role of chloroplasts in photosynthesis. So throughout you have this kind of structure of identifying a part of a plant and then understanding its function and its wider role for the plant as well. Again, I wanted to demonstrate how the resources embed those curriculum objectives. So I'm going to be talking about our newest primary science programme, PIPS, or Pearson International Primary Science. and demonstrate just how objectives are embedded, not just through textbooks and lesson planning, but through a whole range of interactive resources. So I've just taken year 1 as an example and run the order of the curriculum topics against the content page from our year 1 textbook, just to really clearly show how you can see that the structure is exactly the same, the topics covered are exactly the same. So PIPS was designed to cover off all of those specific iPrimary science objectives. And this is just part of a lesson plan for year 1. So here's how one of our lesson plans tackles that objective of knowing that plants have leaves, stems and roots, alongside some of the other objectives from the same topic. And that's a theme you're likely to cover more than one objective from lesson to lesson, including specific investigative skills. So here you're looking at making observations and comparing, but the learning focus for each lesson will always be specific and different. You've also got all the features you'd expect from a lesson plan, including linked worksheets, you've got key vocabulary, book references, you've got a before you teach section, which pulls out any misconceptions. And on that resources supplied, you've got these worksheets. So these sheets are attached to the lesson. In this case, they're just simple for year 1. They're diagrams that at the start of a topic, really clear, really simple to help demonstrate the different parts of a plant. But there's the same level of support across all the years in terms of the worksheets, so they can be used front of class or printed however you would like. And we can also see that within the textbook, how that objective is covered off, how it covers what roots, stems and leaves are, and how we have, as part of our digital ebook, we have an interactive hotspot, which you can click on, which opens an interactive quiz question. Again, that interactive quiz question is fully centered on that curriculum objective. And these quiz questions are also auto-marked. You can allocate them. You can see the reporting of that when students complete those activities as well. And then you can also see how the workbook works alongside the textbook in covering off that objective and practicing that. And as part of PIPS as well, we also have animated topic videos. So across all of the year groups, for primary, we have really nice topic videos for every topic, which is just a nice entry into the topic for each subject area. So in this instance, we're looking at plants. We're introducing key vocab in context, which is especially important for international learners. It might be the first time they're hearing those words. We also have assessments as well that cover the very same objective. So these are progress tests that are across all of our subjects, across all years from primary through to secondary. They're termly or the end of the topic and the end of the year. And they're a really good benchmarking tool. And you can see again, this is the mark scheme for that assessment. So it's probably feeling quite repetitive now, having looked so in detail at this one specific objective, because when you're looking at it in isolation, it is a bit repetitive, but it's just to demonstrate how thoroughly embedded they are, because in reality, when it's in amongst all the other curriculum objectives that you've got, you get a much more holistic, sort of well-rounded learning experience. And so that by the time you get to your Pearson Edexcel external assessment at year 6, you're really confident and well prepared, both students and teachers, that you've got that secure foundation, that familiarity in the curriculum and specification content, and you're ready for that external assessment at year 6. These external assessments are, of course, entirely optional, but they're really good endpoint assessments at the end of year 6 and year 9. They have the same level of support that our international GCSE and international A-level examinations have as well. So really good benchmarking. You've got your exam wizard, your results plus support tools as well for them. But they are optional at year 6 and year 9. In the exact same way, you've got your year 7 objective covered off in our textbook for secondary. And the questions throughout, which have this interactive show hide functionality, so they can be used front of class. You can see how that curriculum objective is covered off. And you've still got it embedded within those progress tests, those assessments there as well. And the mark schemes that go alongside those assessments. That again, by the time that you come to your external assessment at the end of year 9, you're fully prepared to tackle those questions. And again, carrying through to international GCSE, you can see the curriculum objective of describing the structure of a leaf, how it's adapted for photosynthesis, is covered within this textbook spread. And it's not just the textbook, of course, it's the support that runs alongside the textbook. So at International GCSE, we have our teaching hubs. So you have your structure of a leaf lesson plan, all of the resources that you might need. You've got interactives, videos, and really comprehensive guidance that takes you through all those lessons. And again, you've got assessment practice. So that includes mark schemes, examiners' reports. You know, you can see the examples there on screen, which go through how to get the marks for each lesson, for each question, sorry. And that feeds through onto international A-level. So you've got your comprehensive textbook covering those curriculum objectives, and you can see how this is all built from looking at the structure of a leaf to then looking at more specifically the structure of cells and looking at chloroplasts. And you've still got lesson planning support, which looks at embedding other skills alongside the curriculum objectives. You've got math skills, you've got practical skills, and some ideas for incorporating digital activities as well, all in relation to that overarching curriculum objective. And again, you've got assessment materials, practice papers within the textbooks. You've also got your exam prep chapters, which talk you through some exam strategy, how to plan your answers, and that kind of support and guidance. That same level of support is carried throughout iProgress. So you've got the textbooks, the student-facing resources, all of the physical and print student resources we have, but also all of the digital resources, the games, the quiz questions, videos, ebooks, that kind of thing. And then you've got the teacher support, so all of the lesson planning, the teacher guidance, the assessment support, practice papers. Oh, sorry, assessment support I've put on its own level. So assessment support, practice papers, and exam advice. And then you've also got your external benchmarked qualifications as well. Not just at international GCSE, not just at international A-level, but at primary and secondary too, all underpinned by the curriculum as well. So all of this is tied together with the curriculum. So finally, I'm going to look at English now, which is a little bit of a less straightforward pathway just because of the nature of the subject. But again, I'll hopefully demonstrate how that pathway and that progression works. The slight difference with English is that a lot of the skills are much more overlapping and interlinked just due to the nature of the subject. At GCSE and at A-level, they're much more broad assessment objectives, which the objectives at primary and lower secondary do build towards. This overview looks specifically at English language in this case. You can see how initial word reading and phonics at years 1 to 9 will feed into that assessment objective at GCSE, which is all about being able to read and interpret a variety of texts. And at international A-level, feeds into that assessment objective of being all about the construction of meaning and being able to interpret that. For English literature, again, skills are very much overlapping and linked, but you can see how grammar for writing at primary and secondary would feed into assessment objective 2 at GCSE, which looks at analysing language form and structure used by writers to create that meaning, and assessment objective 2 at A-level, which is all about analysing ways in which meanings are shaped in literary texts as well. So I pulled out 2 specific strands for inferential comprehension that we'll look at in a bit more detail for English language and literature. So how we prepare learners to explore links and connections between ideas and text. So in year 1, you're supporting learners to infer how characters feel in pictures. So with support using pictures to infer how characters are feeling. And by the time you get to year 3, you're still supporting them to infer feelings, but now you've moved on to looking at text, not just pictures. At year 4, learners are independently inferring characters' motives from a text. And again, at year 6, independently inferring intentions based on actions and dialogue of a character. At year 7, we are looking at reading beyond literal and explicit meaning. So this is all about making inferences. And you'll notice, again, the wording is very much the same at year 9, but the detail that accompanies the year 7 objective is much more broad, inferences, whereas in year 9, you're honing that skill even more to make more specific inferences. So again, I've taken those endpoints of year 6 and year 9 and show you how it builds to GCSE. So in terms of international GCSE, you're looking at analysing how language is used to create effects and meaning, and really understanding that construction of meaning beyond the explicit, in the same way for international A-level as well. And very briefly, just to prove that we do have that same sort of level of support that you've seen across maths and science, for English, we've got those workbooks, so the print physical resources, we've got progress tests, so assessment support, and we've got our lesson plans, which all embed and link together to support the delivery of that curriculum objective. In year 6, we've very much still got the same level of support, the workbooks, the lesson plans, but you can see within the progress tests relating to this specific objective, we've moved on from a sort of multiple choice question, and we've got a more detailed answer of explaining how you know what certain characters' intentions or motives are. By the time you get to year 9, again, that understanding is built on even further. So you've got your textbooks and workbooks. And in this instance, I've got an example of an activity around inferring key ideas. And you've got your progress tests again. So you've still got that assessment support built in, and your lesson plans as well, which in this instance, you can see the differentiation that's built in there as well, your support and your deepen activities. Right through to international GCSE. So you've got your textbooks that really explicitly cover off that objective of explicit and implicit meaning. You've got your teaching hub lesson planning. So all of that teacher guidance and support that is within the teacher hub. And then you've got your assessment, your practice papers, and all the support and guidance that comes along with that. Right through to international A-level. Exactly the same, you've got your textbooks, you've got all of that teacher support, which might include front of class presentations, and all of that assessment support as well, so practice questions and guidance alongside that. So hopefully that demonstrates what the progression looks like in practice across the core subjects. So you can have a bit of sort of confidence that students are on this consistent journey, that successful pathway, right from primary through to A-level, and that those curriculum and specification objectives are really embedded and weaved throughout our resources and our teacher support and our assessments, and that support remains consistent throughout, so at iPrimary, lower secondary, international GCSE and international A-level. And we have professional development as well that underpins all of that support too. I've talked a lot, so thank you so much for listening to me talk about this, but I'll hand back to Kevin just to run you through that PD element very briefly, and then also to share some feedback from some of the schools who've taken our curriculum. Over to you.
Thanks, Leah. That was great. It's really good to see all that laid out really clearly from strand to strand to strand throughout each of the years, because we always say it's a thing, but it's great to actually see it in practice and talk it through. So if you cast your minds way back, we spoke about the idea that iProgress isn't just a series of qualifications or resources, it's this whole coherent pathway providing support at every level. And one of those key elements was professional development. We didn't interweave professional development into the whole presentation. We thought it was easier to kind of pull it out at the end here. So we wanted to pick out a couple of things. The first is that each of the individual resources or products that Leah was talking about has its own dedicated professional development package. So there's a professional development option for every resource a school may want to use there. And there's just a few selections on the screen. These are already product specific. The second one is more pedagogical related. So especially at primary and lower secondary, where there's people switching to a new curriculum, a new way of teaching, a new way of thinking about things, there's a whole host of, as well as really product or subject specific training, pedagogy orientated training that's available at every phase. It's all written specifically for the iProgress journey, and it's all age appropriate, product specific, age appropriate, that phase of iProgress specific and appropriate for the international teacher and learner as well. And there's just a few examples on screen. And then moving on to international GCSE and A level. We don't always get all of these in one place, so this is kind of a useful slide here if you're teaching at that level. But there's kind of 4 key areas of professional development available here. And the first is the getting ready to teach. So this is teachers new to teaching a qualification or subject, just to provide an understanding of the content with insights on effective coverage, planning and teaching strategies. The second is understanding assessments and improving delivery, and this is designed for teachers already delivering that qual and subject. And it's designed to give an understanding of how assessments are structured and how teaching can be adapted to help your students' performance on exam papers. The next is exam insight, and unsurprisingly, it's about exam insight. So it's providing feedback and insights on a given exam series. So as we all know from series to series, there's quirks, there's things that come up in a particular cohort, there's areas for more development. And it's looking at that and looking at how it can affect your teaching and your students' learning as well. And the final one is enhancing teaching for exam success, again available for all of our IGs and IALs. Another one for teachers already delivering the qualification and subject. And it gives a deeper understanding of how assessments are structured and an insight into the process behind the writing of examination papers and mark schemes, helping you help students maximize their exam potential. And all of this used to be spread out in multiple different places. So you might find professional development information on a product page, on a website. You might find it on a qualifications page near a specification. Now, brilliantly, it's all in one really useful place. So if you're looking for professional development, either scheduled, bespoke, live, online, recorded, free or paid, it can all be found and accessed from the Pearson PD Academy now. So there's some really useful filtering in there where you can break it down and find exactly what you're looking for. So I've spoken for quite a long time. Leah's spoken for even longer. So I thought it'd be useful to close with a couple of quotes, because obviously we're going to say the iProgress journey is this brilliant, coherent thing that takes students through from beginning to end from ages 3 to 19. But we just wanted to share a couple of quotes from schools as well. So the first is from Ahmed Ibrahim, Dean of Studies. These curricula have been instrumental in fostering a robust educational foundation for our students, and we've seen significant benefits in their preparedness for assessments. And then from Potter House School in Kenya, Pearson iPrimary is a valuable international curriculum because of its ability to teach children how to think critically. The way it's thought through is very structured. A lot of work has gone into the planning of each stage and how to transition from one stage to another. So thank you. I hope that's given you a taste of what iProgress is and how it's put together and how that clear progression can benefit your students from ages 3 to 19. If there's any questions at all, be happy to try and answer them now. And if there's anything we don't get to, we'll be sending out an answered Q&A afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kevin and Leah. We have some questions in the chat and the Q&A box. So firstly, does this textbook have a problem solved with answer key?
Yeah, so all of the textbooks have answer keys available as well.
And then do we have a book space specified for French?
So not at primary. At secondary, we'd recommend our Dynamo or our Studio programs. And then at Key Stage 4, we have our International GCSE French course with accompanying book.
And then we have, can we get the worksheets, videos and other resources from Pearson freely, or do we have to pay?
So there is a whole host of free resources out there and available, and a bit of Googling can find you these. Unfortunately, obviously, something like iProgress is a really big piece of work, so it is a paid resource. And I'm hoping that some of kind of the things that Leah talked through in that clear progression would show you the added value it can bring. But of course, there are also good free resources out there if you wanted to Google.
Thank you. And then we have, we don't have an iPrimary Active Learn subscription. How can we get it? Instead, can we get those resources in any other way?
There's a massive amount of resources. So if you're looking at iPrimary and iLower Secondary, some of the published resources that go alongside it are available in print. The core curriculum itself and the progression is digital only. If you've provided your details in the sign up to the webinar, we can make sure that the local regional representative gets back to you and talks to you about how you can access the content.
Thank you. And then do we have to do O levels for A levels?
No, international GCSE. So I wonder if the question is, do we have to have done the previous stage to enter an international A level? So if it's, do you have to do an O level? The preceding stage these days is international GCSE, but you don't actually have to do that. You could enter the international A level as is. You don't have to have done the preceding qualification. Of course, we'd say the preceding qualification is the best possible preparation for it.
Thank you. And then we have how the continuity in the levels is being brought about. Does the complexity in topic as we go higher affect prior knowledge based on the activity in different levels?
Could you read that again? Sorry.
Yeah. Appreciating the presentation on how the continuity in the levels is being brought about, does the complexity in topic as we go higher affect prior knowledge based on activity in the different levels?
Yes. So, I mean, like the whole thing Leah's showing you there actually is a good guidance to what the prior knowledge is. So if you're going to look at that pathway, you could maybe start at your A level or whatever qualification or section you're looking at, and you can track back to see what prior knowledge is required. So when we've been building the whole thing, we've been building that prior knowledge on prior knowledge on prior knowledge, but it can work in reverse as well. So if you're looking at a particular area or a topic students might find difficult, most of our plans and resources will have a section marked prior knowledge, and that will take you to the immediate preceding requisites for that particular topic.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, yeah, in our lesson planning, prerequisites are typically pulled out so that you know what you have to sort of cover before.
Thank you. And then we have, is mechanics a compulsory unit along with P1, P2 and statistics?
No. So let me get this right. IAS maths you've got, and so core maths, further maths, it's 3 compulsory units. It's P1 and P2 in normal maths, and then you pick one of mechanics, statistics, or the other one. Decision, thank you, or decision. So no, you don't have to do mechanics. In further maths, I think it's further pure, and then you get to pick from other further pure mechanics, statistics, or decision. So it's a real amount of flexibility there.
Yeah, if you're interested in sort of finding out more about that, I'd probably recommend, we've got the specification document on our website, so you can have a look. It will go through each of the different strands of content there.
Great, thank you. And then we have, could the strands be broken down a little further for the benefit of primary teachers? The framework is very favourable for the secondary section. And then there's another question of what can be done to help primary teachers zero down the key concepts in the strands?
So I think, Leah, did you want to, or do you want me to take it?
Let's
I was about
both
to
take
stop.
it. You go.
Okay.
So.
And then you can fill in the gaps. Okay, so I think when Leah was showing kind of the overviews there, she's grouped a whole host of different curriculum topics under them, because otherwise we physically wouldn't have room on that page. So at primary level especially, it's really, really very granular, and it's breaking down individual concepts into the kind of key bits of skills and key bits of knowledge. So one of those might have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different objectives under it, telling you exactly what a student should be able to do to achieve it.
That's what I was going to say. I think the overviews that I was showing are definitely the broader topic areas, and then the strands are just one part of that. And then even the curriculum documents, the objectives are broken down much more within the actual lesson plans as well. So it's sort of a scaffolded approach to actually delivering that whole curriculum objective as well. So the whole sort of lesson planning will build towards that curriculum objective within the lesson plans.
Thank you, guys. And then we have, do the English materials pay attention to grammar, especially in the lower years, or is it only focus on inference skills? I love the primary science textbooks. Well done on that.
Oh, nice. Thank you. No, it's absolutely focused on grammar as well. We've got grammar for reading, grammar for writing, and also spoken is weaved in as well. I just pulled out a specific inference example just as to demonstrate that pathway, but we've definitely got grammar built in throughout. And we also have a targeted grammar course as well called Building Blocks, which breaks down core grammar concepts into sort of 15-minute targeted sessions. So that's just for sort of specific practice, but it is weaved throughout our lesson planning in amongst the other skills of sort of comprehension and inference.
Thank you, Leah. Then we have, do we have any revision strategies for IAL at all?
I believe we do.
Revision strategies. So, I mean, I would say it'd be a good idea to actually have a look at the PD Academy there. So, some of the, let me just check which one's most appropriate. So, things like enhancing teaching for exam success in particular is focused on things like preparing those students for examinations, and that covers things like revision strategies and things you might want to do for students to help enable them get those higher grades.
And in terms of the actual student-facing resources as well, the textbooks will cover assessment and sort of how to prepare for examinations as well. So there's guidance in there.
You're right. And there's also summaries leading up to examinations in those IAL textbooks as well.
Yeah, and I believe the IAL textbooks have preparation chapters as well. So it's all about building from GCSE to A level. So you can kind of identify and strengthen that bridge from GCSE to A level. So just getting them more prepared for that bridge to A level content.
Thank you, guys. And then we have a question about how does Edexcel incorporate emerging subjects like robotics or AI into its curriculum?
It's an interesting question. So we're constantly reviewing our curriculum. We like to consider it a bit of a living thing. So it's slightly different at different age groups. I mean, for something like international GCSE and international A level, obviously these need to be really robust, proven examinations that go through a careful development process. But at the moment, for example, we're going to be launching a new IAL computer science qualification in 2026. And I think we're pretty confident that things like AI and robotics will play a core part in that. And then across the different age groups, we make sure that specifications are prone to amendment. They're always given lots of notice when this happens, but we try to include kind of latest thinking and latest ideas in there. And the same is true for resources. So we try to include information on that. If you're particularly interested in the idea of robotics or AI as well, there's also our extended product qualification, which gives you a bit more freedom around getting a qualification. The idea being you can put forward your own proposal, perhaps research-based on a particular subject. And there's a new guided strand in there specifically around AI.
And I would say at Pearson, more generally, we are like constantly looking at the latest developments of AI. There's constant sort of research into that section. So anything that can be used, we're sort of making sure that we use it, but we're also making sure that we're appropriate with it. And there's the sort of ethics element into that as well. So making sure we're using it appropriately, and we're going to be okay for using that in the future as well. So future-proofing it.
Thank you, guys. And then we've got a couple of questions about how to go about AS and IAL. Are there any specific links or leads for them?
How to enter or how to
it says how to go about, so I'm thinking it's to do with how to teach it and guidance for any layers of teaching methods.
Okay. So, I mean, I would absolutely 100% look at the PD Academy there, because if you're new to the qualification, the Getting Ready to Teach training is really, really helpful there, and it's available for every qualification, and it's also free, which everyone loves. There's lots of recordings of past events as well available on that PD Academy, which are great. And then the IAL textbooks themselves, in a subject with a textbook, is full of lots of good information, lots of guidance, and lots of teaching tips as well.
And I think I've seen that there's some questions and comments around just wanting generally more resources at international A level. So if I would just say always just share that feedback with us and let us know, because we're always looking at, you know, what we can develop and what else we can make to support you. So if you can pass on what you feel might need improving or where you think there might be some gaps, please do let us know. You can get in touch with your sort of local representative and they'll pass on any feedback, or just send us an email.
Thank you. And then our final question is, if a student fails the English language exam, will they have to repeat the whole exam for IG?
It depends if they enter a modular examination. So you might have heard about our new modular international GCSEs. If you're going to enter modular, then you would only have to retake, obviously retakes are always optional, whatever grade you get, but you would only have to retake the particular examination that you had got the mark you wanted a better mark in. You don't have to retake the whole thing.
Thanks, Kevin. We have another question that's just come through. iProgress is a good idea and works best for us who can keep children in a clear curriculum system, unlike situations where students switch schools. How easy does it make for a learner to switch from another curriculum to iProgress?
I mean, I'd argue, I mean, there's a couple of things there. The first is that anybody switching from one school to another, there's going to be disruption. There's always disruption. And there's no guarantee wherever you're going and wherever you're coming from that you'd have the same, whether you're going from English National Curriculum to IB to iProgress. What iProgress does do is provide a really coherent and consistent idea of where that class is and where you're coming from. And all of the prerequisite stuff that Leah spoke about is excellent as well, because you can then look at those prerequisites with an incoming child to make sure that they cover those requirements to hit the curriculum. And those prerequisites all link to their own teaching resources as well. So if you needed to intervene or you needed to provide more support, you absolutely could. And then there's a huge amount of kind of assessment resource as well, which can be used with that child to help get them up to speed and to help identify exactly where they are at that point. And we didn't have time today, but there's also some really excellent work that's been done by Leah, in fact, around kind of mark books and the tracking and the assessment there, where you can use both formative more like tangible formative assessment and also teacher observation to identify particular gaps in a child's learning. So my kind of answer is, it's difficult whatever, but it's easier with this because of the structure and the support that's provided.
I would also add to that you can utilise, because we've got those assessments, and not just at sort of year 6, year 9, we've got progress tests throughout all the years. And what a lot of schools tend to do is take the sort of previous year groups end of year test at the start of the next year, just to identify any gaps or any sort of areas that might need more support before teaching the next year's content. So for any new students, that might be quite a useful thing to do for them when they're coming in from perhaps from a different curricula, to just sort of identify places where maybe they didn't cover in as much detail, or maybe they just didn't have the support. So that's a good idea for flagging that. And you can use the mark books that we have alongside those tests to help indicate where you're weaker across maybe a whole cohort or down to the individuals as well.
Thank you, guys. And then our final question. Oh no, we've got another one come through as well. We've got time for these last 2 questions. So another one related to AS levels is, how do we get the worksheets related to the topics for them?
So, I mean, it depends which worksheets we're talking about. I mean, if you were to go onto the qualifications website and look at a particular specification, there's a tab at the top which says course materials, and there is a selection of free teaching resources. And in amongst it, there are generally schemes of work and some limited worksheets. Then, in addition to that, if you wanted a greater level of resource, we have for worksheets, paid teacher resources called teacher resource packs at international A level, and details of these are available from your local rep or on the international schools website, and they're available through our Active Learn digital platform.
Thank you, Kevin. And then final question, does the lesson plan brief what the teachers need to cover the area as per the curriculum, or is there a boundary?
Not 100% sure on what you're asking. If it's on the lesson plan brief, what the teachers need to cover the area as per the curriculum, or is there a boundary? So the lesson plans fully cover off all of the curriculum, if that's what you're sort of asking there. And we have schemes of work that break down the curriculum into suggested orders of teaching as well. So you can see exactly when and where those curriculum objectives are suggested to be covered. And then the lesson planning goes that step further and breaks it down day by day. So it'll be all of the curriculum objectives will be covered off within the lesson planning.
Thank you, Leah. That's all we have time for today. So if you've got any other questions, please just send an email over and we can answer them after this. So like I said at the beginning, you will receive an email with the webinar recording and the slides in it for you to be able to go over in your own time, as well as a certificate of attendance. Thank you for today, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much, everyone.